I always feel like the alchemy of silence, you know, when you're starting to get a little fidgety, a little uncomfortable, that's when it's actually starting to work its magic on you. So thank you. So we're here today to talk about the invitation. And this brought to mind for me a nephew that I have who is at a rather difficult age. He's 14. He just started high school this year. A couple years ago, he and my sister, single mama, decided to make the right but challenging decision to move away from family and friends and move up to Portland, Oregon. And so in many ways, this has been a really wonderful move for them. All of a sudden, he's in an area where there's a lot more opportunities, a lot more programs, a lot more diversity. So for someone like my nephew who's mixed race, he gets to all of a sudden not be surrounded by a bunch of faces that don't look like him. He gets to see more people that more closely mirror his experience. And I'm really happy he gets to experience that. And all of a sudden he's going from podunk, tiny little town in California to a big urban environment where there's lots of access to choices that may not be the best for him at this moment. So it's been interesting to watch our family navigate this. Everyone has opinions, right, about what he should be doing and how to handle it. So we did a rather maybe naive or brave, depending on how you look at it, thing as a family this summer. We decided to get together for a 4-day weekend. Grandparents, siblings, 5 adults, 3 teenagers, all in one house, 3 households put together for 4 days on the Mendocino coast. So, you know, if you want to see what happens, what is it? If you think you're enlightened, go spend 2 days with your family, see what happens. Bless you. So I got to see a very firsthand experience of how people want to navigate this challenging time with my nephew. I got to see firsthand how my sister, bless her, who as the sole parent in this household is trying to figure out how to walk that delicate line between setting firm boundaries and establishing consequences and all of that, but also maintaining connection with her kid. And how do you do that, right? I got to see my mom, who has always been from the school of tough love and say it like I see it, and this is the moment, we're going to deal with this right now, thank you. And sure enough, she kept true to form. So we would be sitting down in the middle of dinner and she would whip out a book that she happened to be reading and read a passage aloud, you know, not invited by anyone to do so, but she wanted us to know this is what I think needs to happen in this situation. She would bring in her favorite Bible verses to let us know this is what you all need to hear. I would watch her walk across the room as my nephew's sitting there in the chair, scrolling on his phone again, and she would say, Malachi, I need to talk to you. And so right there, you know, she would kind of deliver a little bit of a mini sermon right to him as he's sitting in the chair. And I have to say, my mom, she's well-intentioned. What she has to say is not completely invalid. He needs to get off his phone. He needs to make better choices. He needs to help around the house. Everything she's saying is technically sound, but it's the way in which she's saying it is making it so he has no ability to hear her. As her words are coming out, they're getting lobbed into the air like little bullets, like little shards, and I'm watching them cut whatever thin thread of connection could have existed between the two of them. So her words are falling on deaf ears. And then I got to watch my dad, and it's been a really interesting progression. At 72 years of age, he has some skills and some tools available to him that he didn't have 30 years ago as a parent. So when my nephew decides for about the 5th time that weekend that he will not be joining us for the family meal, and we go into a restaurant and, you know, all of us are sitting down and very politely and cordially, I watch my father get up and excuse himself. And he doesn't say, I'm going to go to that car and tell him, young man, you better come join us and be with your family. He says, I'm going to go hang out with him. I'm just going to sit in the car with him. I'm going to see how he's doing. I just want to hang out with my grandson. When we're out hiking and the rest of us are barreling ahead and, you know, hunting for berries and what have you, I watch my father fall back in line with my nephew and turn towards him in such a way that I see a softening start to happen. He has this posture not of reprimand, but of listening with his whole being. And I see as he does this, that there is the threads of connection that were severed before start to reassemble themselves just by the way that he shows up to create this web of connection there, this invitation he makes with his whole body. And don't get me wrong, he has a lot of the same fears that we have, right? This is a critical age. You can make a lot of really big choices that could impact the rest of your future at 14. We're worried, is he gonna end up dropping out of school? Is he going to end up an addict? Is he gonna get some girl pregnant? Is he going to, as a black-skinned male in this country, we know that he's twice as likely to be racially profiled or picked up by police. My father is just as much aware as I am that, like, statistics according to the University of Berkeley School of Public Health, that as a brown-skinned male, he's 3.5 times more likely than his white-skinned peers to be accosted or physically harmed by an encounter with an officer of the law. We know these things. They're very present in our minds, and yet I watch my father not let the fear and the anxiety drive his interactions. Instead, I watch him access a place of calm within himself so that he can bring that to his interactions with his grandson. Chip mentioned to us all, there's been a lot of conversations around Palestine this week, and as well there should be. I'm really glad to see our community showing up for this difficult conversation. And so my week started a little bit earlier. There was a big public space that was open on Wednesday night, and so I ended up attending a smaller group on Tuesday. This is a group of people that have decided to come together once a month. There's some follow-up material to the film Where the Olive Trees Weep. I don't know if any of you have seen that one. Beautiful, beautiful film about the Israeli occupation and apartheid. And so this is a group of people that want to come together to talk about how do we continue to lean into this? How do we advocate for the lives of Palestinians in our community? And as we sat in this circle, I heard a lot of people saying, I'm angry because I can't get my friends and my neighbors to care about this. How do I speak so that they will listen? What do I have to say to get people to wake up and to get involved? I heard a lot of people saying, how do I speak to those who see this very differently than me? I don't know how to walk into a room with someone who holds a very different perspective and to not let my righteous anger take over. How do I stay connected? How do I stay in conversation with this person that I vehemently disagree with? I heard one person, the token male within this group, just say, where are all the guys? Like, why aren't more guys showing up to these spaces? And I said, yeah, that's a thing. I go to a lot of circles where you get one or two maybe. And I found myself thinking aloud here about the types of spaces, the circles that we create when we want to engender change. What are we creating? Is the circle wide enough to create an invitation to the many? And as I looked around at this particular smaller circle, I thought about, for someone like me, this is it. This is the place I need to be. For someone where words is like a form of oxygen, where ideas and sharing resources and books and podcasts and inspiration, this is my love language. I am going to get lit up and nourished and feel my gifts strengthened. I'm going to come out of a space like that really, really affirmed in my purpose, knowing what I need to do. I thought of people like my husband, who is much more of a show me, don't tell me type. He'd much rather be out there doing things with his hands than just talking theoretically about things. He's much more of an acts of service, love language kind of a guy. And to top it all off, he's deaf in one ear. So I look at this circle of people, half of them are masked and he can't read their lips. I'm like, this is a nightmare for someone like him. It's not that he doesn't want to get involved. This is not the kind of space that would help hone and uplift and honor his gifts. This is not a circle that is wide and vibrant and diverse enough to invite someone like him in. As Chip mentioned, there was the other talks happening this week on Palestine, and I was so grateful to see those organized. We had some amazing speakers, religious leaders from different traditions, people from Cal Poly Humboldt, people from CR. There was a lot of scholarship, a lot of care went into putting this event together. And as you mentioned, there was one group that, for whether intentionally, unintentionally, formally, not formally, did feel like they were not invited to participate in this circle, and that was Humboldt for Palestine. And so In fact, I want to back up before I say this because there was one other piece of framework that I want to mention before I go into this. Back in this little circle on Tuesday, I found myself referencing the work of Deepa Iyer, and I don't know if you're familiar with her. She has a framework that she calls the Social Change Ecosystem Framework. And what she does is she creates a map on for all of us that want to come together and envision and create a better world. She has this beautiful map that she's created for us. And it's not a map the way we think of where you move from point A to point B, and if you just follow these steps, you'll arrive at the destination where you want to go. Rather, the map that she's created is a circle. And at the very center of that circle is what we are all aiming for. This is the common dream we are dreaming together. This is the song that is on our lips and in our hearts. At the center of this circle lies justice, equity, liberation, solidarity. This is what we are all coming to, what we're striving for. It's a little akin to our Unitarian Universalist constellation of values, right? Where you have love at the center, and that's meant to be our compass, and everything else can gather around that. And so she posits in this map, right? There's not one point of entry to do this work. Rather, she says the circle is wide. And you have people like visionaries standing who want to come and do this work. You have guides, you have weavers, you have healers, you have frontline responders, you have disruptors. And every person, every archetype is someone that is valued and necessary to do this work. And if we imagine that the narrow slice of the circle that we inhabit is the only way to approach the work, we are missing out on an entire ecosystem and web of support on which we could call to do this work. We have to widen our gaze and widen our circle to remember everyone is needed in this space. So back to these conversations that happened over the week. And so you have this group of disruptors, right? Humboldt for Palestine came in. They didn't feel invited to speak formally, to take the microphone. And so they came, as good disruptors do, with their placards and their voices. And they did their best. They disrupted this process until the organizers actually ended up doing a very wise thing and said, you know what? Let's pause. Let's actually invite you up to take the microphone, because what you have to say is necessary. It's something that's coming from your heart, and we want to make a space for that. Now, it might have been more impacting had they had the forethought to do it ahead of time. But one thing I watched as well, that energy of the disruptor, that anger of feeling excluded. So many people had already been hearing them from the sidelines, disrupting the proceedings, seeing them as almost kind of the bad children who weren't invited to participate, that when they came forward to speak their truth, people weren't able to hear it. All they heard was the anger. All they heard was the despair and the righteous indignation and this pointing of the finger. And even though there was valuable information being conveyed, again, it was falling on deaf ears because they had not found a way in to communicate that people could hear. So in a few weeks, or over the next couple of weeks, we, as a congregation, as you may well know, as you may have seen, I don't know if you got a load of the documents that are hanging out in the foyer. You got some reading to do when you leave today. We have some very important conversations coming up as a community. Next week, we have some wonderful people coming to talk to us about the process of consensus, which is, to my understanding, we are one of the few congregations that still tries to engage in this messy, complicated, powerful process of decision-making by consensus. And so because it's messy, because it's complicated, we need a little refresher course. So come next week, you're gonna get one. And the reason I think people don't do this is because it's difficult. It's complicated. There's so many places that could go wrong, and yet this is the way that we have chosen to create a circle where we feel like everyone can be heard. Rather than just let a few token people speak for the masses, we want to create a space where everyone feels like you have a valid and rooted place in which to speak your truth and your heart, because it matters. We want to hear from you. You are an integral part of this community, so we want to create a space where everyone can be a voice. The following week, we are going to come together and have, as part of our sacred observances, a congregational meeting where we're going to talk about how are we doing, what kind of leadership have we had, what kind of leadership do we want, what is the future of ministry here at the fellowship. And I know a lot of you have some pretty strong opinions about this, right? Some of you may have already done your research. Some of you may already have a very well articulated 8-point plan that you want to come and share with us and say, this is the way I think we should move forward. And that's great. And we need your scholarship and your leadership. And I want to just pause and invite you. Some of you may feel like, thanks for the heads up. I'm going to skip that day because that sounds like a lot of mess and headache to me. And I think I need to go out to brunch that day, actually. And I get that. And I want to say to both of these yous, these imaginal archetypal yous, both the person coming in with a very well-articulated plan, but also the person that would just as soon skip the messiness, you are missing a vital opportunity. This is how we show up, because it's one thing to show up and say our aspiration and talk about the kind of people we want to be, but this is how we embody it. We show up into the discomfort, we lean in, and we create a space where not only our own voice can be heard, but we're willing to listen to the messiness and the multiplicity of all the different guides and visionaries and disruptors, the builders. We come and we lean into this space that we co-create together. So I hope that we can continue to show up to these spaces and practice this work together. So, which just brings me back to my own little family stories. And you may wonder, why do I even bring in my family stories, right? My family's not that interesting. There's way more colorful families out there. But I think it bears repeating because this is the place we learn, right? Our family systems are the first places we learn about how we build connection, how we do relationship, how we share power. If we learned really young that if you needed to shout in order to get your needs met, you might get really good at shouting. If you learned that no one was going to listen anyway, so you might as well just turn away, go to brunch, keep it to yourself. This is the place to relearn some of those patterns, rewire some of those pathways. At one point during the long weekend, my sister and I found ourselves at one of those little souvenir shops, and there was a whole wall of those fun socks you see, right? They're really colorful and snarky, have all these little kind of sarcastic witticisms. A lot of them have swear words, so they're kind of extra fun. And she points to one pair at one point, and she's like, I think I need these. And I look up at where she's pointing, and it says, and the socks say, I love my asshole kids. And she turns to me and she's like, I know it seems like I coddle my son. I know it seems like I'm not hard enough on him and I'm not setting firm enough boundaries. I'm not telling him what he needs to be doing. I get how it looks to other people. But I refuse to lose connection with my son. I refuse to become an unsafe space for him. I want him to know that no matter what stupid choices he makes, he will always have a home with me. I want him to know that there is nothing he can do that will put him outside of the circle of my love. And so that is the invitation I want to bring to us all today, to let us land in. May we continue to show up inside these messy family spaces that we are co-creating and commit, yes, to our values and our mission, our work together, but may we stay committed to being safe spaces for each other. May we continue to communicate through our words, through our actions, through the ways we show up for one another. There is nothing you can do that is going to put you outside the circle of my love and my compassion. That's our work. If we miss that, we've missed everything. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for hearing these words. And my hope, my prayer is that they anchor somewhere deep inside of you and allow this to continue to grow and blossom. In a moment, we're going to pass our baskets around, and we actually have another special guest today. You may have smelled the wondrousness as you came in today.